Alright, so today's episode we're going to focus on diagnosing charging systems. Mom's Subaru's been having some issues. The battery's been going dead pretty often, and the battery that's in it's only about a year old, so we need to figure out what's causing the drain on the battery, why it's not charging back up. Could be a bad battery, could be a bad alternator. So we're going to look into that and see. We're kind of on a time crunch because we're getting a pretty heavy snow this evening, so we're going to try to knock that out relatively quickly. My favorite phrase to say. And see what's going on with the Subaru. Stay tuned. Alright, next thing you want to do is check the voltage on the battery. So we're going to hook up red to positive, black to negative. It's showing 6 volts, which is really bad. Now, what you want to do, since the battery is that low, if you have access to a charger, we're going to pull this battery out, charge it, and then test the alternator. Because right now, if we start it, this number is probably only going to go up to 8 or 9 volts, which isn't going to do anything for the battery, and it's going to look like the alternator might be bad, even though the battery's not outputting. So what I can notice here, looks like quite a bit of corrosion around this, like the battery might have been boiling at some point, some acid. So pretty sure I'm leaning towards a bad battery at this point, but we're going to charge it just to be sure. Alright, at this point you want to take out the battery and try to charge it. The problem is when you get this low of a voltage, most modern chargers aren't going to even attempt to charge it unless it sees more than, I think, 10 volts. So what we were able to do was take the battery out of my wife's car, put that into Mom's Subaru, and then test the alternator that way with a known good battery. If you don't have a good battery, chances are with 6 volts your battery is bad anyway, so just go ahead and take that to the parts store. They probably got some type of testing device that they can hook up to it. Alright, so as you can see, the alternator is definitely charging. It's the battery that's bad. What I did was took the battery out of my wife's car and put it in this one just to make sure that the alternator was working. We really didn't have time to wait for the other battery to try to charge up, so worked out pretty well. The battery that we're taking out did have a warranty because it's only like a year old, so we're gonna go take it and swap it out now. From the parts store, we were able to swap out the battery for a brand new one. They didn't ask too many questions whenever they hooked the machine up, and their machine wouldn't even register that it was a battery because the voltage on it was so low. They swapped it out, no issues. Her old battery was only like a year and a half old. That's why I really wanted to troubleshoot that charging system, because typically a good battery should last you anywhere from 3 to 6 years, depending on the brand and how well it's kept up, and make sure you're starting it and charging everything. Mom's car does sit a lot, so that, I believe that was one factor on the battery going dead so quick. But that's one of the things that you want to keep an eye on. Just make sure that you're keeping your batteries maintained, keeping them charged up, and they'll last a lot longer. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about battery voltage. So if all you have is a voltmeter like this one, you can tell a lot about the health of your battery. So right now, this battery just came off the shelf from the parts store, and we're looking at 12.5 volts, which is fine. That's perfectly healthy for a battery. But any lower than that, you're looking at about 11.5 to the 12 volt mark. Your battery's in pretty bad shape. You probably need to pull it out, throw it on a charger, and get it back up to the point where it can maintain that charge. Because your alternator is not necessarily designed to charge your battery all the time, as much as it is to maintain it and keep it working optimally for starting your vehicle and running your accessories, things like that. So one thing about batteries like this, whenever they're unloaded at the store. This one, for instance, was unloaded in December. It's at the end of January now. So roughly it's set on the shelf. If that was December 1st, you're looking at almost 2 months. So it's always a good idea to bring the battery home if you have a charger. Throw it on a charger before you put it in the car. That's just going to help your alternator, your charging system out. It doesn't have to do that much work to bring this battery back to its peak performance standard. If your battery is older and it needs charge, it's usually better to put it on a slow trickle charge overnight. In this case, the battery voltage was pretty high, so I'm going to use a quick 10 amp charge just to get it back to 100%. Now what I'm working on, as the battery's charging, her battery hold down had quite a bit of corrosion on it. I took it inside, take some baking soda and vinegar. It'll help to neutralize any battery acid that's on it or anything. Now I'm just going to take a wire wheel, knock some of the rust off, a couple coats of paint, and then we can wait for the battery to charge. Clean up these as well. You want to take a wire brush to the threads of them, because a lot of times what happens is once you tighten these down, it may be a few years before you take it back off, and they can be a pain to get undone. And like right now, when it's 20 degrees outside, you really don't want to be fighting your hold down. So. Okay, so I got that battery hold down cleaned up, painted. Looks a lot better. Got the majority of the rust off of it. And then the battery is saying 100% charged, so let's go grab it, throw it back in the car, and see what it does. Alright, so we got the battery back in. It's charging right at 14.5, which is perfect. You know, the alternator's doing its job. If you don't have a voltmeter, consider buying one. They're an invaluable tool. They're worth their weight in gold when you need them. Just with this simple device, we were able to troubleshoot the system today and save ourselves a lot of money. Luckily, Mom didn't have to buy a battery. The one that she had was still under the warranty, so we were able to take it and exchange it for a new one. But if she would have had to buy it, I think the battery we got today was 190 bucks. So just buying that warranty and having this voltmeter right here, we were able to tell exactly what the car needed. Now, another thing I consider investing in is a battery charger. If you're going to have your vehicle sit for a long time, it's worth its weight in gold to just hook that up, put it on a slow 1 to 2 amp charge, and just keep the battery at that 12 volt mark. Anytime you drain a battery down and bring it back up, it's going to significantly reduce the life cycle of that battery. So if you're going to leave it parked, consider throwing a trickle charger on there and keeping that battery up. You'll save a lot of money in the long run. That pretty much wraps up today's episode. We're getting ready to order the exhaust and the tire pressure delete for the Honda, so stay tuned for that. If you like the content that's being put out, consider subscribing and check us out next time. Hopefully we're not snowed in. Take care.